Good evening, folks. I'm Councilwoman Joanne Ryan, calling the special commission for taxation and revenue regular meeting to order. It is Wednesday, October 11, and it is 5:02. 5:02. Thank you, Councilwoman. Madam Clerk, could you kindly read the roll?
Chairwoman Joanne Ryan,
Present.
Vice Chairman Michael DeVries,
Present.
Councilman Pedro Espinal,
Present.
Councilor Sue Engelbart, present, Lawrence Mancini,
Present.
Sharon Turner Wells is absent, Jane Driver is absent, Thomas Burrows,
Here.
Robert Stolzman is absent.
Jane Driver is here.
Traffic, it's bad.
We have 7 present, 3 absent. We have a quorum.
Okay. I would like to recognize that we are staffed this evening by our wonderful clerks, Donna Collegian and Julie Blanca. Thank you very much, ladies. And we also have Erin Isabaira from the Policy Office of the City Council. Thank you for being here. Okay, I would like to, why don't we swear folks in first? That sound good? I want to swear everybody in. We missed that step last month.
So, Madam
Everybody
Chair, for
present.
clarification,
Yes.
if a person is presenting is also a commissioner, they require to be sworn as well?
I'm gonna say yes. What the heck? Out of an abundance of caution.
I knew you were going to say that.
Let's just get everyone sworn.
Absolutely.
Okay. And our auditors, everybody, that we're to do all at once. David.
Oh, that's 4 years.
And
4 years.
Ginny's in the back. We're gonna ask you a question or two, so just jump on.
Yeah, let's just all.
That's everybody's on that side.
Everybody, we're all here.
Yeah. Okay, let's go.
All right, please raise your right hands. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And could you please state your names for the record? We'll start with Gina up in the corner. Gina Cuthbert, internal auditor.
Lawrence Mancini, Chief Financial Officer and Commission Member.
Crystal Lindbergh, Deputy Finance Director and Budget Officer. Janice Hospitality, Tax Assessor.
Okay, that's it. Okay, thank you all. Madam Clerk, could you kindly read the first item into the record?
Item number 1, broad discussion on cities' historical taxes and other revenue components. The following will be presenting: Lawrence J. Mancini, Chief Financial Officer, Board Member; Crystal Lindbergh, Deputy Finance Director, Finance Department.
Wonderful. Okay,
So, Madam
it's
Chair,
your show.
Madam Chair, thank you and welcome to Ms. Lindbergh, who is joining this evening, and she's a highly valued member of the finance team. With your consent, Madam Chair, members of the commission, if we could have her lead off, she'll have that broad discussion on the city's taxes and the current budget revenue and that breakdown. Following her testimony, Madam Chair, I will present to the board information that I obtained from the State of Rhode Island Department of Revenue, Division of Municipal Finance, where they analyze all of the cities and towns of Rhode Island, and we were able to secure what we call the urban ring, which includes 13 cities and towns, most of them comparable to metropolitan cities, just to give a flavor of what they look like in their revenue and what percentage of their budgets based on taxes, pilot, if they receive pilot, et cetera. I think that it'd be helpful for the commission to see what other cities and towns look like. But the primary focus this evening is the city's budget, and with that, I defer to Ms. Lindbergh and her role as the Deputy Finance Director.
Do you have any materials for the commission? Okay. So why don't we get that distributed before we begin? May I refer to this as one exhibit?
Yes.
Okay, let's refer to, city tax history, a packet, multiple pages, 13 pages in a spreadsheet, Schedule A, and we'll refer to this as Exhibit H. May I have a motion to enter Exhibit H into the record? Vice Chair makes that motion, and seconded by Councilman Andujar.
Exhibit E.
What is H?
They left off on D at the last meeting.
So it is, what is the exhibit, please, for this? E? E is an Edward.
Yes.
Okay, and Vice Chair makes that correction. He withdrew his previous motion. He makes that motion to call this Exhibit A, and Councilwoman Andujar withdraws her initial. She's making this exhibit motion to make this Exhibit E. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. The matter is entered into the record. Ms. Lindberg, please. Begin
Madam
your
Chair.
presentation.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, and thank you to the rest of the members of the committee. I'd like to start with a brief overview of the city's tax history. As you can see, the city of Providence operating budget is primarily funded by real estate and tangible property taxes. In fiscal 2024, this makes up 62% of the city's total budget of $583 million. Attached to this presentation is Schedule A, which includes historical tax data dating back to 2001. It lists the commercial tax rate, the levy associated with that rate, the residential rates for owner and non-owner occupied properties, the levy associated with those rates, and the same exact information for tangible inventory and excise tax. Additionally, we've added some notes for pertinent information related to those tax years. You will see that some years are highlighted in gray. Those years represent a property revaluation year, in which we will typically see property tax rates rated by a considerable amount based on how property assessments have increased or decreased in the past revaluation cycle. As you can see that up until 2008, the city had assessed an inventory tax. That tax was phased out as part of the state phase out program. Additionally, we were up until 2003 assessing tax for motor vehicle excise tax. That tax has also been phased out and was replaced with a reimbursement from the state of Rhode Island in the amount of $34 million. And that $34 million can be found in the city's non-departmental section of the budget. Our commercial tax rates have ranged.
Is that amount grow? I'm sorry.
No. No, that is a flat amount.
Flat amount.
Mhm. Yep. The commercial tax rate has ranged from a low of $26.99 to a high of $38.82. Residential tax rates have ranged from a high of $38.82 per thousand to a low of $17.80 per thousand. And tangible tax rates have ranged from a high of $58.580 per thousand to a low of $46.68 per thousand. The fiscal year 2024 budget has adopted the following tax rates: $35.10 per thousand for commercial, $18.35 per thousand for residential with a homestead exemption of 43%, and $53.40 per thousand for tangible. Currently, the city of Providence has the 14th highest residential tax rate, the 32nd highest effective owner-occupied residential tax rate, the highest commercial tax rate, and the 5th highest tangible tax rate in the state. If you flip to page 2, you can see a comparison chart that shows how Providence ranks to our sister cities and towns in the state of Rhode Island. Page 3 lists the same data for commercial and tangible property taxes. One thing I'd like to note on the schedule is while the Providence rates reflect the fiscal 2024 rate, the Division of Municipal Finance has not updated their schedule for fiscal 2024, so all of the other cities and towns are referencing the fiscal 2023 rates. I can prepare an updated schedule as soon as those new rates are published by DMF. If you continue to page 4, you'll see a breakdown of the fiscal 2024 revenue by revenue type. Taxes, including real estate and property taxes, are 66.1% of our budget. Payment in lieu of taxes from our colleges, hospitals, and universities represent 1.2% of our budget. State revenue makes up a little over 20% of the budget. Departmental revenue, which will be broken down further in the next section, represents almost 5% of our budget. Fines and forfeitures are just under 1%. And miscellaneous receipts represent 1.6%, and transfers from other funds are just under 5%. And these are transfers from funds that collect things like rescue run revenue, police and fire details, and the ARPA funding. On page 6, we've broken down the fiscal 2024 revenue budget by department. As you can see, public safety is the largest generator of revenue by far, and that revenue is primarily driven by the speed camera, the speed zone cameras for school traffic calming measures, and the red light photo cameras. The city has also benefited from sustainability's efforts to sell excess energy credits. This year, we were able to budget $1.8 million, which is a significant increase year over year. Another pickup the city's seen in fiscal 2024 is our interest revenue, which is not seen in this slide, but is worth mentioning. We've budgeted an additional almost $2 million, I believe it was over $2 million this year in interest that we are earning on our funds that are on hand for ARPA, as well as investments we made from the general fund. The city's operating budget has historically benefited from the actuals exceeding the budget. This trend was disrupted by COVID-19, but one thing I would like to point out as well, we budget the ARPA revenue as a transfer in. When it is actually reported for audit standards, it's reported as a reduction in expense. And so for fiscal 2024, there's $11.5 million budgeted in revenue that we know we will not see, and we will instead have an $11.5 million reduction to our public safety salary expenses. This is done for a variety of reasons, but primarily to maintain the integrity of our data. And so we've consistently chosen the same set of expenditures to reduce year over year, so that when we're tracking the impact of the COVID pandemic, we're able to very easily identify which expenses we were reducing because of that federal funding.
Has that been audited, the ARPA spending?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, the internal auditor is very acquainted with that, but yes, they audit regularly, and I'm consistently talking with our external auditors about that front.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. As you can see, fiscal 2024 is very clearly incomplete, and 2023 is unaudited, but the next few pages will show you historically how the city's budget has trended against actuals. Again, most years we have benefited from more revenue than anticipated. However, you can see in 2014 and 15, when the country was undergoing some significant financial constraints, the city did fall a bit shy of what we had anticipated. Each year, the city appropriates its expenditure budget into 5 different categories. Those categories are salaries, employee benefits, services, supplies, and capital. And on page 9, you can see the breakdown of how each of those categories are allocated. Salaries comprise the bulk of our budget at 26%, followed next by employee benefits at just under 26%. I will note that the capital expense of almost $7.5 million is a new addition to the city's operating budget. This is currently being funded by revenue recovery dollars from ARPA, and has been included in the fiscal 2023 and 2024 budgets. It may be in 2025, but that will depend on project spend at the end of fiscal year 2024. We can further break down the 2024 expenditures by department. As you can see, the public safety divisions comprise the bulk of the city's operating budget. Followed next by a variety of administrative offices that were consolidated together just to make the pie chart possible. Page 12 and 13 continue this information. And that's the completion of my overview. Are there any questions?
Madam Clerk, Could we close this door? There's quite a bit of activity going on here. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I just said that kind of wraps up the deck I put together, but I'm not sure if there's any specific questions on the items I discussed. I know Larry has a couple things he wanted to go through as well.
Commission members, does anybody have any questions? Councilman,
Thank you so much, Chairwoman. Thank you for the really thorough presentation. I have two quick questions. One's quick. Will the car tax payments from the state eventually get phased out? Is that?
No,
Okay, so it's like in perpetuity, we'll get the same amount.
it is. It's in perpetuity, but unfortunately, like other taxes, there's no growth. And I think
Yeah.
that's what the chair was alluding to earlier. Yep, so we are flat at that amount,
Okay.
definitely.
And then is it, and this might actually be more of a question for Vice Chair Beasley, but is it typical for capital cities to have the highest commercial tax rate, or for large commercial cities to have the highest commercial tax rate for their state? Like, I know I did a tour of some of the businesses in my neighborhood with the mayor a little bit ago, and he was explaining the highest commercial tax rate, and a number of them were like, that makes sense, like, I would want to be in Cumberland, you know, like, we pay for what we get. Is that a fairly typical thing, or are we kind of an outlier in that, or that could be something that we certainly don't qualify, I'm sure if that was something.
I'm actually not sure. I think you probably find cities having relatively high tax rates. I'm not sure it's because they can't.
Yeah. No, it was just an interesting, I think people got me like, oh, it's crazy, and I was like, yeah, that's fine. It's not totally. Thank you.
okay. Chief,
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I have a series of slides that I will provide narrative to. As I said in my opening comments, these were taken directly from the Rhode Island Department of Revenue Division of Municipal Finance, which administers reporting of all municipalities of the state of Rhode Island. These are the last known results based on fiscal year 2022.
okay, let's enter this into the record, Chief, before, let's just get everybody a copy of it.
Yeah.
So we have a presentation on multiple pages.
Yes, and Madam Chair, for the
We
record,
have none.
the numbering was due to the numbering provided by the state. These had multiple slides that were,
Okay. You
That
put me
will-
on that one. You just want to see those
It's like
things.
a puzzle.
Okay, so we have a number of slides put together, looks to be about a dozen pages or so. And we're gonna call this Exhibit F. May I have that motion? Motion is made by Vice Chair DeViese, seconded by Tom Segoras, Commissioner Segoras. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, ayes have it, motion carries. Please continue, Chief.
thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Thank you, Mr. Lindbergh, for your testimony. Thank you. Madam Chair, in an effort to obtain information that was appropriate for the commission's proceedings, the commission had asked to we compare the city of Providence to other municipalities. And while Ms. Lindbergh did that with her tax rate chart, and so has the assessor in previous testimony, and I believe the internal auditor has done the same, I thought that that would be a repeated exercise, and I thought maybe it would be best that we look at comparable cities. Under the portal associated with the Division of Municipal Finance, a user can select any number of options, including, if you will, an option known as municipal core. If I selected municipal core, that would have only included 5 cities. It would have included Providence, Pawtucket, Newport, East Providence, and Central Falls. If you select a wider range, which is known as municipal rate range, you would have gotten the remaining cities, which are many of our neighbors: North Providence, Warwick, West Warwick, and Cranston. So with that, I believe there are 10 cities that are included here, and they make up the metropolitan Providence area. And this exercise was done to determine, based on audited results that were filed through the 2022 fiscal year of these cities or towns, what does their budget look like when comprised of revenue components, including, I think, the mainstay, which is taxes, and then the various other components, including those cities or towns that are qualified and eligible to receive pilot funding, like Providence, or other revenue, And so as we go through these slides, I'm going to point that out to the commission.
Thank
The
you.
first one, and please ignore the numbering. The numbering came from the state's format. There were other selective slides that had no bearing on today's proceedings, so I omitted them from them. But this one is, this is actually a replica of the 2022 budget associated with taxes by community. You can see that Providence's taxes totaling $356 million, clearly and by far the most significant tax entity in the entire state of Rhode Island. And there's no small reason for that, other than that we have the largest tax base that's providing the tax to city government. But you can see that following us is really the city of Warwick. Again, that would be no surprise to me, Warwick being the next largest city, and then follow that is Cranston, and then you can see there are the other cities and towns. And I encourage commission members to do just that. You can go to the Rhode Island Department of Revenue, Division of Municipal Finance, look at their transparency portal. There's so much data there that you could download and make comparisons, and it's very helpful. It's all audited information. And I think Commissioner DeVies, you're probably familiar with that from your work at the Department of Administration and now at Ryback. So it's a good site and it's valid information. We report monthly. Every city and town reports monthly, and then annually we file an adopted budget report. So the very information that Ms. Lindbergh shared this evening is already on record with Division of Municipal Finance as a report that must be filed within 30 days of budget adoption. So that's the next one in the pack, which has a number 7 at the bottom of the page. This was to break down the current levy for 2022 based on its components of collection. The vast majority of it. We have that? Page 7? Oh, sorry. My apologies, page 12. Okay, page 12. This is a percentage of collection by municipality based upon their tax collections. You will see, surprising enough to me, but you'll see that Providence generally budgets between 93 and 94% of its revenue as expected to be collected, and we do in fact do that. Some of the other cities and towns are showing close to a 98% actual collection rate based on their levy. It's fair to say that in Providence, over any 10-year period, Providence collects nearly 99% of its revenue in taxes, particularly real estate. And the reasons for that are quite straightforward. Because of real estate taxes, it has the capability of being paid by mortgages, if you have a mortgage. And if there are non-payment, then the city engages the process that most communities engage on as a tax sale. And while that may not be a popular option, it is clearly one of the tools that is used by tax collectors throughout the country, if not the region, for sure, in ensuring that there's tax collection, or at least the prospect of a tax sale property going into tax sale. It clearly engages the taxpayer's attention, and it clearly precipitates payment when called for. So Providence, over a 10-year period of any tax year, has close to a 99% collection rate. And in almost every given year, it's at least 94% budgeted revenue. We have always hit 100% of budgeted revenue. And in many years, knock on wood, sometimes it's actually a little higher than actual budgeted revenue, maybe 3/4 of a basis point, if you will, in revenue collection. These are the cities and towns that we're comparing against. So I think you'll find that, what does this slide represent? It represents not only is the largest component of every municipality's budget taxes, but it is highly reliable one, as in the means in which it is collected. That there is really a municipality that does not collect what it expects to collect by any means, and that's the 10 of that. Following that, numbered at page 7 at the bottom. This is once again the percentage of those items that fall into a tax category. You'll note that they put in their pilot, they mean local pilots, like the ones that we just collected, that we just signed for a long-term agreement that the council just adopted or passed that resolution. So you'll see that Providence, 95% of its budget, when you add in those other components, is predicated on some predictable payment associated with collection, either taxes or near taxes or like taxes, whether it be a TSA or a pilot, and those are included in that line. And you can see that it ranks favorably, or at least it ranks within the comparable areas of its comparable communities. Remember, 5 of these communities are considered distressed communities for reimbursement of state aid when you only use the core communities, the 5 core communities, being Providence, Woonsocket, Central Falls, Pawtucket, and East Providence, where we widened it to include neighbors, just to get a different flavor. That's how we took in cities like Cranston and Warwick as well, and North Providence. Following page, next is a listing of other revenues by other categories, including federal aid, local non-property tax revenue, other revenue, and of course, state aid and property taxes. Once again, if you look at Providence highlighted in blue, 62.9 or 63% of its revenue does come from taxes. The next largest share at 16.79% is state aid. State aid would include all methods of reimbursement, including state pilot reimbursement, motor vehicle reimbursement, distressed cities, housing aid is all incorporated into that 16.79. The next block is other miscellaneous revenue. Local non-property tax revenue would be the pilot and or TSAs, and then the last block is federal aid, and we do receive some federal assistance. Compared to our neighbors or comparable cities, you'll see that our reliance on taxation in that segment is less than cities like Pawtucket, North Providence, Newport, Cranston, Warwick, and West Warwick. In fact, we're more in line with the cities of Central Falls and Woonsocket in terms of the dependence on tax revenue to support the entire revenue budget. But I lay that out before you for that analysis. Moving to the next page, this is a wider view that includes other sources of state aid, which was the criteria, and that includes not only motor vehicle excise tax reimbursement, meals and beverage, so-called library aid, which is reimbursed for distressed cities, and housing aid. But once again, if you look in Providence's column, 35.91% of our revenue is associated with the pilot. We receive roughly $37 million a year in pilot funds. This is the monies that are paid to the city based on the formula and state statute associated with the non-taxation of tax exempt institutions. 35% of our revenue sources come from pilot. The next largest block would be the motor vehicle reimbursement. Today, that payment is roughly $36 million itself between the two motor vehicle reimbursement programs. There was one a dozen or so years earlier that was suspended and interrupted, but we still receive a base payment on that of about $1.6 million. And then under the new model that phased in over the past 6 years, that number is close to $33 million. So combined, almost 35 or 36 million in motor vehicle permanent reimbursement aid under the state statute. The next block at 8.73% is meals and beverage. We've had a healthy return to meals and beverage revenue and hotel revenue. While we thought that that area of revenue would suffer greatly during the pandemic, we were pleased to see that while it was off somewhat, it made a strong recovery in the past 2 fiscal years. I'm proud to say that the city's meal and beverage actually during the pandemic, and I'm sure Ms. Lindbergh will get on this, during the pandemic, meals and beverage tax actually increased. I think probably because people were ordering out more and still consuming, but not consuming in public places, if you will. So that's a criteria. The next block in that shaded pink is housing aid. The housing aid is predicated on the city's reimbursement for school bonded debt. And as you know, because we're a distressed community by formula, at minimum, the city receives 82% return, 82% reimbursement for every qualified school bounded project. Under the new models, which is called Newer and Fewer 21st Century Learning, there is additional 9% bonus points that's available on projects that have been certified and approved through June 30th, 2024. There is some discussion going on, whether it makes its way here or not, but there's some discussion going on that we may be candidates for a much larger consideration of borrowing at a reimbursement rate of closer to 91%, and there may be other considerations that would get us to maybe full reimbursement on the next round. So we have the capacity to borrow, we have the voters' authority to borrow. It's a question of when we would do that and how the projects come together. Well, that's a different conversation. Mindful of that, be mindful that that's a reimbursed revenue. So while we're obligated for the debt payments and we make those payments, when the projects are completed or substantially completed, we do qualify for that percentage of reimbursement. And that's been a well documented path for the city's finance department. And you can see how we compare to other cities and towns in that regard. Much of this was presented, Madam Chair and Commissioners, for your benefit to review that and make some judgment the comparable cities. The last page was, again, local non-property revenue associated with what we call departmental revenue, fines and forfeitures, investment income, licenses and permits, and other revenue, including police, detail, and rescue runs. You'll see that for Providence, out of all those non-tax revenues, the largest component greatly would be departmental revenue, which probably comes from fees like associated with Department of Inspection Standards and others. The next largest category would be in the coral shade in the middle of that block, the 20.64 license and permits. The next largest one would be police and fire detail. And then the next largest one would be rescue run. You can see that in other communities, like in the city of Warren, rescue run represents 29% of their budget versus 12% of our budget. Likewise, in North Providence, their rescue run revenue represents 29% of their budget. So when you look at Providence, we're not the outlier that one might think we are in terms of what other revenues, if not burden, do we place on the community in terms of collecting that revenue by other means.
What is Newport doing, the 54.47 departmental?
That's a good question. They may classify some of their tourism differently. I think that clearly includes their tourism revenue. They have a very active tourism commission in Newport, and rightfully so. It's an international attraction, so I think part of that is included in there. But so that would complete this analysis. Myself and the finance team are happy to provide additional data detail, even at subsequent meetings, as we can get that data. We took this data as quickly as we could get it last week, and we analyzed it, selecting these slides for this evening's introduction. If the commission is pleased with that, we could do deeper dives on many of that. We can shrink the circle, if you will. We can widen it to the whole state, but it's a resource and a tool that is at least used for comparative purposes to say, hey, we have an idea here. How would that idea work in comparison to other cities and towns? I think it's important to say that at least it's a resource. And I also spoke to the director of the Division of Municipal Finance, Mr. Coleman. He or his team would be glad to appear before this commission if that was the commission's wish, to provide some background and information on state revenue sources and how cities and towns stack up, including the city of Providence. So I had suggested that to him, and I said I would run it by the chair, and if that's something that you desire to do, maybe later in the session, we could have them come in and give some testimony.
We can look at that.
Yeah.
First, I'd like to say this is great. This is a great exercise, and I'm glad that you were able to provide these slides. I'm interested in quite a few of them, actually.
Yeah.
In this last one, I find very interesting. There's such, many of the previous slides were very similar, but there's a lot of difference or variations in these cities and towns, and I'm intrigued to see what the value of those changes or difference would be.
And if I might make a suggestion, Madam Chair, if the internal order is okay with that, we can share regularly our team and her team with that same website, and maybe we can pick apart some of the slides that we think comprehensively make more and better sense for the commission to look at. I think that would be more helpful. Is
this something new? Is this a new resource?
No, it's been around for a while, but while they promote it regularly, while we're monthly users for reporting, you won't get that type of data analysis until the year completes itself. But we can go back several years. We can go back to, I think, as early as 16. So a little bit of labor involved in the printing of these documents, because you have to select the right slide and pick the right range. But in a matter of minutes, we can tune up on that, and we have their assistance as well.
As part of the budget process, does the administration go through an exercise in looking at what other municipalities charge for fees and permits?
We have,
We go
we
through
have,
that
and we do regularly whenever that prospect of additional revenue is discussed. Yes.
Commissioners, Councilman Angle.
I have to follow up to the chairwoman's question. Do we also look at comparable cities not in Rhode Island? Like, do we ever look at like Boston or Cambridge or Worcester or similarly?
In the course of our due diligence, we reach out to the region when we're looking at statistics. For example, when we were vetting the two recent public safety fire and police on the expenditure side. We did look at other cities, not only in the state, but we went to the region, Connecticut and Massachusetts, for comparable benefit packages, comparable wages and salary. On the revenue side, because of the uniqueness of each of these cities, Providence being very unique, not just because it's a capital city like Boston or Hartford, we have more unique situations than they do. And they certainly have a larger base to collect from. I always say that we'd be blessed if we were in a 4 or 5 team sport national league team, national sports teams, baseball, football, basketball, hockey, and soccer. We would be blessed if we had that Providence, like cities like Boston and others. Because of that revenue, the revenue generated to the economy and the revenue generated to the state and local government.
Thank you. Are you all set?
Yeah, that's great.
Council, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Larry, great presentation. I just wanted to point out, I don't want to complicate things, but Providence, like all the other cities in town, disregards state school aid in their financials.
That's correct.
Even though the schools, I think, are part of the same legal entity, even though arguably the city is primarily responsible for funding those schools. So that doesn't appear as a revenue. I see that the reimbursements for school construction appears as revenue.
Yep.
But it is part of the reason, I think, why the reliance on property taxes are lower in those communities which are more heavily funded by the state. And it does, one of the things it does end up being out of mind because, I don't think cities and towns recognize the connection between school aid and their budgets.
I agree. And to that point, Commissioner, there are part of the reason why the numbering is not numbered is because in the set, there were slides that were associated with school funding. But because we were focused in time being on the municipal side of the equation, and you can select municipal versus school, and because we no longer adopt their budget, if you will, I did not want to constrain this discussion. But we can look at that just from an analytical point of view. There is quite a bit of data there that we look at. It's amazing what a data warehouse they have. And our own team has a great data warehouse. I know the Internal Water knows how to determine that data as well. So
They can just follow. The Office of Municipal Affairs has that same mindset that they just regard the school.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes,
Councilman
please.
Israel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the last page, Larry, number 4 is it is very interesting because within the comparative cities, you're looking at the licensing permit and just at 20.4%. Compared to the Central Falls, they're at 42.60. I find those numbers to be interesting.
So as a percentage of their budget or our budget,
But they're bringing in more.
and
Percentage-wise,
I'd be willing to
yeah.
bet that they also have, on a per capita basis, a greater number of liquor licenses or entertainment licenses or food dispenser licenses for that size of the community on a per capita basis than City Providence. And that's how, so it's not a distortion as much as it's an actual reflection of, yeah.
Right, and I was gonna get to that, but also to the other cities as well. I don't know, maybe we should center a little bit around that.
Yeah.
What are they doing that way now?
Well, see, like you take North Providence, 50% of their non-tax budget is based on what looks to be license and permits. And so it's a manner in which, how do they classify license and permits? And it could be, in North Providence, if you take the length of Middle Spring Avenue, I would bet 2 out of every 3 businesses go some form of license, mechanic shop, a liquor store, a restaurant. I mean, there's not a square inch of land left to put a commercial structure in the town of North Providence. I travel that road frequently by observation. In Warren, Post Road, Ball Hill Road, again, probably 2 out of every 3 businesses has some licensing provision. And in Providence, while we have a number of main thoroughfares, I don't know if it would stack up by length of size and businesses and size of business.
All right, that explains it.
But again, that's my interpretation of it. We can dive a little deeper, but that's what this was meant to do, to kind of wellspring in our minds, like, well, why them more than us? What caused that? What could we do different?
Well, it sounds like we got room to grow, right?
Perhaps, no doubt.
Plenty room to grow.
If I may just add something as well, I had the blessing of implementing this for the city back in 2018, and so I was very intimately acquainted with how DMF requires you to categorize things.
Correct.
I specifically called them about licenses and permits when we were processing this because I was unsure of if I should be considering a building permit, a licensing or permit, or a
Correct.
departmental revenue. Our GL reports that as departmental revenue. And the guidance I received from the DMF was to put it wherever I felt was most appropriate. And so I think the data integrity of what is a departmental revenue versus a license versus what's a fines and forfeiture may not be as clear as we would like it to be
Consistent,
based on the guidance that is given by DMF.
It's a good point. Well taken.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thanks, Lars.
Chief, can I ask, when was the last, I asked you a question about, if you review our fees and fines as part of our budgeting process. Well, when was the last time they were adjusted? And is there an ordinance that requires them to be reviewed on a regular basis? And compared and contrasted to other municipalities?
I'm not,
It's a big
I
question.
don't believe there's an ordinance that compels us to do that on a regular basis. I do know that we're governed by state law and those that require state law, state approval. Like liquor licenses, and building inspection fees, they're governed by appropriate state legislation.
But there's a whole host.
Yeah, we look at fees regularly to determine whether or not there's opportunity. But we're mindful of the burden that it places on business as well, that, if we can find alternative or other revenue sources to make up necessary budget shortfall as we prepare the budget, that would be our first choice as budget preparers. I think mindful of the fact that, to a small business person, it may seem insignificant, but even a 5% change in a series of fees. I think if you own a restaurant that serves food and liquor, you're probably looking at, for liquor license renewal, nothing less than $2,800 this time of the year. That's, if you're not doing those kinds of numbers, that's a big number. For liquor license and inspection, and living permit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It can get quite expensive. So we've looked at it. Over the past decade, we've certainly had the ability to add fees like sidewalk permits for restaurants who were able to use sidewalk permission on weekends to offer, their guests and diners to go outside on sidewalks. We have not had, in recent time, I would say in the last 4 or 5 years, a comprehensive review of fees, I don't think.
Well, I will add that every year, one of the budget schedules we ask for is a fee schedule.
Yeah.
So when departments are submitting their budgets to finance, we require that they submit us a schedule of all the fees and they determine whether or not those are set by state statute or an internal process. And typically during the budget review process, we discuss those fees and the costs associated with those fees to true up whether or not they're accurate. To my knowledge, we've not adjusted the bulk of them. However, each time we have a contract with police or fire, we are going in and updating the rates associated with the details.
So, good answer, thank you. I'm happy to know we have a comprehensive list. Do the cities and towns, the League of Cities and Towns, produce any kind of survey? Have we ever looked for that? I'd like to go through the exercise in this commission of actually cataloging, put them all in one place, and then compare and contrast if we can to some other municipalities. I don't know what the value of that might be, but there's a lot of fees. And I think that it's prudent for us to have a protocol or process in place for reviewing them and comparing them. I think we collect them and we consider them as part of our budget. Commissioner Jordan.
I just have a little bit of an observation and question. So on the west side and south side of the city, there's a lot of businesses that set up shop and conduct business as cash. And this guy Ruby that has this truck on Westminster Street and it's along with a lot of people that are in storefronts, but he has a truck, big cube trucks. And he sets up a whole long thing and very busy. I mean, everybody's wondering what's happening there. So if he had a storefront, he'd pay one tax amount, but he's conducting business in a, food stand. How,
He would have to have a peddler.
Peddler.
so how much different is that from paying taxes if he we're in an actual
Well,
building.
as a mobile business, in this case, a peddler, he'd have to have a peddler's license. If he was operating on a Sunday, he'd have to have a Sunday license.
He's every day.
Yeah, so I would imagine there is a series of licenses if he's handling food, he'd have to have a food handler's license, a victual license. And some of those are issues with the state of Rhode Island, more than the local businesses. Permit to make sales at retail is a state division of taxation permit. And then the vehicle itself would have to be inspected, I would presume by more than a license, it may be a requirement of the state, if there's a rolling business, that might be part of the state inspection to make sure that vehicle is safe to be on the road and conduct business as a, let's say, a food truck. So, different than a storefront location. Storefront location, inspector would make a visit to make sure that there was appropriate licenses in place. If it's a food establishment, there'd have to be a food license, if it serves liquor license, and so forth. Litter permit if you have trash. There are a number of licenses, it varies with each business, but that's where the licensing fees are charged at the local level, but they're governed by state law as well.
I guess I'm just curious about what the difference is and what if anybody's enforcing stuff.
I would imagine the difference is overhead, that there's a lower overhead when you own your vehicle and you can use that as your business, and you have a customer base that supports you.
I think it upsets a lot of the other local business people that actually have a mom and pop shop and they're working it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But it's amazing, if I look around, this is just a digress from, in many communities, including in the rural communities, food truck events have become a major item. And it's an attraction for attendance to the event, and the modern world, people like that, like the fact that they can pick from several different food vendors. So,
Can also be a challenge to an existing business.
yeah,
And also cause some concern in the neighborhood if it's walking traffic.
no doubt.
is high volume.
No doubt.
I had a conversation recently with Councilman Esmo. I thought you were gonna jump right in on that.
Well, I
You're
I'd
so
like
patient. Please.
I guess coming to the driver's question would be, what is the difference in cost? What does it cost a food truck to get a license from the city of Providence? What is the actual dollars?
to my knowledge,
$75?
on the peddler's license, they're still considered peddler. Before there was the word food trucks, they were mobile box lunch caterers. There were people that showed up at Julie Star construction sites, and there was one person that ran a catering truck, opened up the wings, and served coffee with a coffee truck. That's a peddler's license, and probably different than a person who has a brick and mortar location. They wouldn't be called a peddler because it's a retail license to sell at retail, and if they're serving food, they both have to have a food handler's license, etc. So I don't think there's much difference in the price. I just think there may be a difference in which license is issued to run their business as a mobile business versus a stationary.
And they're very successful. You know, there are businesses out there, lines are up.
No doubt.
They're making a lot of money. And it is at points a distraction to the brick and mortar business, because all condo parking from the business owner don't have much resource. They'll call and they do have a right to be there.
Okay, so that's a whole nother.
It's an issue.
It's a big issue. It's a good topic, and I know that you're on that in the ordinance
Yes.
committee. So we look forward to your further review of that.
Thank you.
Councilwoman.
Thank you. If I could just add to this real quick. So 2018, when I was the state's director of food policy, I worked with now Secretary of Commerce, Ms. Tanner. We had a whole statewide, we had a little task force where we brought together meetings of like the Hospitality Association, food truck folks and others to map out, because every city and town has their own array of the different, all the things related to food truck. And then the states, its own array of all the things. And so I know that Secretary Tanner did do some cleanup to at least the state laws that pertain to that. And there is likely still some documentation of what the various cities and towns regulations are for that, if that's helpful. And I think Secretary Tanner would be a great, or her staff at this point, would be a great resource on some of that. But that is something that there was a comprehensive review of that, I think it was 2018 at the state level, and some cleanup on the state level regulations.
Okay, so not to spend too much time on that, we've got a lot to get through tonight, but that was a good discussion, and I know that you're picking that up and further.
Thank you.
All right, Anything else, Chief? Are you all set? Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for, Chief and Chief, Crystal Lumber? Okay. With that, Madam Clerk, could you kindly read the second item into the record?
Item number 2, historical information associated with progressive tax proposals. The following has been invited: Gina Costa, Internal Auditor, Office of the Internal Auditor; David Finnegan, Senior Auditor, Office of the Internal Auditor.
Okay, so Ms. Costa, Auditor Costa, is going to provide us with requests first before she goes into the tax proposals. So I'm going to enter that first into the record as Exhibit G. So it is a multi-page PowerPoint presentation, 9-page. Thank you for reading that. Exhibit G, may I have a motion to call Commissioner's request for meeting on 9/27 as Exhibit G? Motion made by Vice Chair DeVier, seconded by Councilman Espinal. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. We have Exhibit G entered into the record. And then we have two, should I do this into one?
I recommend doing them all together, because these are all of the requests from the previous meeting.
Oh, all of this?
Yes, these are from the tax assessor, it's the 6+ apartment, tax agreement, and then vacant lots.
So I'm asking for a motion to combine. There's 3 presentations here that should be called Exhibit G. Commissioner request for meeting on 9/27. So there's 3 packets, which is the PowerPoint and the Excel spreadsheets. Motion made by Vice Chair DeVier, seconded by Councilman Espinal. All in favor, aye. And opposed, ayes have it. Motion carries. So this is 3 packets. This is previously requested information. Gina, please.
Starting with the PowerPoint presentation, it was asked to have more of a breakdown of the general fund revenue. This is just fiscal 24. I know Crystal just went over it, but this is what you requested, so we provided it. As you go through all of the pages, the payment and the taxes, what that supports that number. Speaks for itself. It was just more detail on what was presented last time. Page 5 is the average assessed value, the average taxes paid by type of house. If you have this detail.
No, this is good. This is good.
And then
Commissioner Sabars?
These are the average values, the heights of the bars.
yes, the bars are the average values, and then the lines are the average taxes paid,
Okay.
which is on the right-hand side of the value.
Also, Commissioner?
Yep.
Please continue, Gina.
Page 6 is the request for Commissioner Severis about the taxes for owner-occupied multifamily houses and single family and how they're broken down. So that is what all of that breaks out over
Over time.
the 3 time periods, 15, 15, and 30. Now, we also asked for the 6+ apartments. Denise did provide that. That is the second packet put together. The 6+.
That's in the Excel spreadsheet. Title 6 unit
The
apartment.
one that was a legal size that was reduced to letter size. Still legal.
But that catalogs all of them. That is every property, every 6 unit, 6 months. Good job. Julie. You said you could do it.
And as you continue through, you wanted a list of the PRA properties, which is on page three.
I'm sorry, this is,
Commissioner Sikoris, yes.
again, just a clarification. Each line is a specific property in this table here, in
Yes.
this table.
Denise, this is that.
Janice, will you step up, please? Since we've got this in front of us, the 6+ unit apartment building. Analysis that you provided. Can you respond to Commissioner Sikoris' questions?
Each line is a property?
It is,
Okay,
it is.
and it is a, like, here's a line that says 14A, 6+ apartments come. And that's a property that's classified as 14A.
That's a type that we use within our
Right.
system to classify these properties and the type of structure they are.
Mhm.
The next column is the assessed value.
Yep.
And the number of
One of the
units.
units, okay,
I just put a little asterisk on the bottom because although these are the number of units that we have on record within our system, I obviously didn't verify that they're all 100% accurate. So I didn't want to, that's another reason why I didn't include addresses, because I did not want any
Yeah.
misconstrued information out there about a specific property.
This is fun. Commissioner Sikoris, do you have any further questions?
only, is it appropriate or is it possible to have this electronically? I would absolutely appreciate that.
Yes, if you could share your email address with me at the, or if you would like me to send it to Joe and Ryan.
Why don't you send it to the clerk and the clerk can disperse it? appropriately?
Agreed. Thank you.
Anything else? You good? Okay, stay with us.
Okay.
All right. What else you have?
So then on page 8, the PRA list of properties that's requested. And page 9, the properties that were labeled as vote of the city. More detail than provided last time. And then the final large packets is residential vacant lots.
Is there a total? In this resolution, is it wrong?
They have not completed. I didn't prefer to do it. This was
Amazing
just-
that there's that one.
I just want to make it clear, once again, that these are vacant lots, but not necessarily are they buildable. We just use a data set of at least 3,500 square feet or above. I would take me months and days to try and verify if any of these lots are in fact buildable, if people have to check with zoning, and to see if they may just be people's side yards, backyards, so.
Okay, Commissioner Sikoris.
Is it, would not the assessment be sort of an indication of whether it's buildable or not?
Not necessarily. We'll look at the sales for, during the evaluation, we obviously look at sales of vacant lots and based on the area, come up with a price per square foot, so whether or not that lot can be truly be built on, is it somebody's side yard that they're holding on to? It still would have the value of. If you notice, some of the lots are very small. When you look at the 3,500, 4,500 square foot lots, you're looking at $35,000 value, $36,000 value. And I would I would argue that if that property was to be sold as a buildable lot, it would probably sell for well over $35,000. So it's kind of difficult to.
I understand what you're saying. The ones up at the top though are, I mean, here's a 4,000 square foot one that's assessed at 343,000.
Could be the area. Each one would have to, I can't give you definitive answers because each one of these would have to really be looked at to determine what it's being used for, what the area is in. And
Thank you.
Okay.
I think I
Any other
sorted
questions?
it by ward, sorry, excuse me.
It's okay.
I think I sorted it by ward, it's not in order.
Mhm.
Yeah, I did. I sorted it by ward.
Vice Chair DeVries?
I just wanted to say this reflects a tremendous amount of work. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, if I could ask it.
Commissioner Dragon?
So vacant lots, if they're being used for surface parking lots, are those taxed differently? Maybe if I took this one easier, like if it's, you know, on the service road, right down from Carpenter Street along there.
Those would be, these are specific to residential vacant lots, that was the request. That what you're describing sounds like a commercial vacant. And those would be taxed. It
How much does it, out of curiosity, like,
would depend on, once again, the area, the size, what it's being used for. Is it commercial parking, is it just a paid, lot, is it used for just an office building? It depends truly on how it's being used, the type of parking it's for.
I think I'd be curious about that going forward, maybe just because surface parking lots are not the highest and best use, but it's a kind of a lucrative venture for an owner. So I'd just be curious what those vacant lots are and what people are paying tax, what their tax bill is in different parts. I don't want to keep trying to walk. Just what I don't know, I'm just curious, and I think it's revenue. And it's also, parking lots are super ugly. So I'm just curious.
Yeah. Anyone else? All set? Okay. Ms. Costa? What else you got? Progressive tax. Okay, so there was discussion on about what has been done in the past, or what thinking we've utilized in the past relative to taxing year by year. So the auditors have put together a nice little presentation, I think, to give you a snapshot of what we've done in the past, and Ms. Costa's gonna walk us through that, but let's call this H, I guess it's H, are we H now?
We are on H.
Okay, motion to make the sample models exhibit H made by Vice Chair
Second,
DBA, seconded by Councilman Esposito, all in favor, aye, and opposed, ayes have it, motion carries. Sample models is exhibit H. Madam Auditor, so walk us through this. What did you prepare for us?
Historically, in 2020, we attempted to do a tiered tax rate. I believe 2020 was one of the bigger revals. So we were trying to be fair and equitable, and one of the recommendations was a tiered tax. It didn't succeed. I think COVID hit right after. So
It
looking
passed the House, excuse me, passed the Senate, not the House. Only because of time,
time, right?
and that was the 40-28 tiered model that you have kind of in the center there. But
So, yes, what I did is we have fiscal year 24 where we are today. And then when we ran a 40-28 tier, you basically have all 3,500 and 504 properties listed, homestead, non-homestead. And obviously only the ones with the homestead will be affected because, no, this one, it's not, but all affected because this tax rate dropped. I went back to 17.8 because that's what it was in 2020. So look down increase in property taxes under this 4028 with today's values sees an increase. 57% have an increase, 43% have the decrease. The 43% of the decrease are the non-owner occupied properties because the tax rate dropped. So it is a lower homestead exemption, and with the values going up as high as they did, it wasn't enough to cover the difference of the 3% homestead, so all of the properties saw an increase. So, yes.
Commissioner Savarich.
I just want to make sure I understand what the 50%, 20%, 10%, and the 40%, 28%
Okay,
are.
so, yeah, so the 40%, if you look over to your right, there's a 40-28 tier range.
Yep.
If your property is valued between up to 350,000, you had a homestead exemption of 40%.
Okay,
If you had a property valued at 500,000, you had the first 350,000 received 40%, and then between 350,01 to 500, you received the 28%.
okay, gotcha.
So everyone got the value of a homestead, it's just based on the value of your property, you got different levels.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And that was the two-tier model.
So we tried another model, we did 3 tiers, 50% up to 300,000, 20% between 300,000 and 750,000, and then 10% for everything over. If you look at that, 19% of the properties compared to today see an increase, 39% see a decrease. That number combined, 58%, that is a non-owner occupied percentage of properties. So non-owner occupied will not see a change because the tax rate remains the same.
Okay.
Again, if you look, you see $1 million property would see the, anyone over 800,000 would see the 10%.
Do you have another question, Commissioner? Just pausing, waiting.
Oh,
Okay,
Okay.
and then the final one we did was a median flat rate. So we took the median value, which is 307.
307,600.
That. So we took 50% of that. And you'll see a 23% increase and a 35% decrease compared to today's numbers. And if you also look down, you can see at the bottom an increase of tax collection. Under the flat rate, it's an $8.6 million increase. Under the 50-20-10, it's a $4.9 million increase.
The median flat rate, where has that been employed?
Cambridge does they do 33% of their median rate, but their value is like 650,000, or it's very large. Also, looking at the median flat rate, I took the total value of the exemption, the homestead exemption, and I divided it by the number of recipients of the homestead exemption. And on average, every individual would get $176,000 in a homestead exemption if it were flat.
Commissioner,
Could you explain the
Commissioner,
median flat rate with it?
Median flat rate is every single owner occupied would just get $153,800 off of the value of their property.
so no break, no
There's no
split on
percentage.
the property value, no percentage, everybody gets it straight.
Yes,
So the standard deduction.
it's a flat exemption. All of the personal exemptions are all one. They're flat. I call them flat, but it's a fixed number.
And you said Central Falls, just
Central Falls, yes, because I actually reached out to their tax assessor. They do a flat exemption, plus they do the owner occupied, non-owner occupied. And it's quite large, $12 for owner occupied, 18 for non-owner, plus that other exemption. So, yeah, it's very large.
Are you finished? Commissioners first?
It's just clarifying, I'm not changing the subject. Are these encompassed by current state law?
No, I don't believe they are. That's.
The median, but
I'm thinking median.
the median one-
I think the median
I
one
think
is.
it is, but we need the legal
Or-
opinion on that.
or it's at least specific, it's Central Falls is allowed to do it, is all we know.
Yes.
Okay.
Each one, I think, in state law, each municipality has their own exemptions, so it gets kind of tricky.
We don't know, to answer your question, we
I don't
don't know, we need a
believe
legal
Providence
opinion on that.
Okay.
We're giving you this because we wanted you to start to have the benefit of the thinking that we've gone through in the past. The median flat rate, I think, is kind of new, which I thought was interesting, and we wanted to look at what the math was on that. The 40-28 tiered model was something that was, talked about a lot, and at the time, values were less than they are now. And back then, it was much more attractive. But I think the message that we're, trying to speak to is that these tiered models help provide relief.
Mhm.
And I think one of the goals of this committee is to try to look at ways that we can modulate our tax increases. And if we need to ask for General Assembly approval, this is one of the things that might be on our ask list. But obviously, we'd have to justify that. So that's why I kind of wanted to start to look at these models. I find it very interesting. And again, you have to consider that it's not just the homestead, it's the tax rate combined, and the biggest question is the valuation, property values. Commissioner, Diaz.
I just want to point out that these models are not likely intended to generate revenue. They're intended to change the allocation of so I don't criticize it, but I mean, if you're looking for more revenue, that isn't what these numbers are not big enough to change the world, right? These
No, but it starts to look at what the impact of our decisions are when we start to change the rates and the value of the homestead. So those are things that we need to look at further. Which is a good segue for me into Steve Williams. Are you familiar with Steve Williams? Seth Williams, I'm sorry. Chief, could you talk about his background and his nexus with the city? He's agreed to come before this commission, but Chief,
I'd be happy
please
to.
introduce him.
Seth Williams is he is a senior director with PFM, Professional Financial Management. He's advised the city on a number of projects over a number of periods of time. He was a participant and lead writer in the original NRN report that was done during the early days of the Laws Administration. That report had some substantive value in some of the things that we did in budgets and in negotiations on contracts. He also was a lead participant in the commission that was formed to assist with the pension obligation bond, to educate the public as well as General Assembly and other stakeholders. Mr. DBA's served on that commission along with myself, as I was not a commission member, but I was an administrator to the commission, and did a fabulous job in running the report that actually went on to become the report that was used with the General Assembly, the City Council, and other stakeholders, and paved the way for the passage of that POV, if you will. He regularly appears before government bodies and provides information, sometimes as an accommodation, other times under contract. We had reached out to him as administration at your request and requested the commission, and he is planning to come up on the 23rd, I believe, in London. And I think what he'll do is give us his background and his expertise in revenue recognition, enhancement, and revenue ideas as an amalgamation of many cities throughout the country that he's represented or he has worked for, and has a strong knowledge of Northeast cities, very strong knowledge. Clearly, a good background, believe it or not, in Rhode Island. Well, he's based out of Philadelphia, very well acquainted with Rhode Island. He's spent a great deal here. He's well acquainted with the government process, the legislative process, the General Assembly, City Council. Many of the city council members are familiar to him, yourself included, Madam Chair. So that's scheduled for the following week, for the 23rd.
23rd.
And I know that you had asked if we could have a further discussion on rebound. Ms. Muscatelli will tell you that just this week, the city awarded the most recent bid for the next round of rebound to engage the consultant. That consultant, once again, is Vision Appraisal. They had done the second most previous rebound. The most recent one was done by Northeast Appraisals. Vision was the awarded bidder. While that contract gets vetted for signature, upon completion of that, they would be available to come before the commission to give their view of how a proper reval is conducted and what's involved in the reval and what you would need to know about reval statistics, if you will.
But the timing of that, we think we could get them.
I defer to the assessor. She's working with the
Because
law.
that's a big piece of our
I'm hoping for the first or second week in November.
Because it has to be vetted by the law department and their counsel. They cannot make public testimony without a signed agreement, and we fully abide by that, so. But it's in motion, and I think it'll serve the commission well.
Okay. So I'm really excited about Seth Williams being able to come before us, because that gets at the broader question of
Yep.
trying to identify big revenue sources. And also recognize the huge liabilities that the city has before us, which we need to try to solve for. So that's a good discussion. Anything else from any other commissioners on what they'd like to see at this point? Because what I'm going to suggest is we take next week off, because we've got some work to do. And I need to start to digest some of this information that we've looked at, that we've been presented with, that we meet next on the 23rd. We have that Seth Williams discussion, and then we figure out the next meeting after that. Commissioner Sparks.
I was wondering if there would be an opportunity to present that, the contents of the memo that I gave you.
Yeah, so Commissioner Sparks has put together a memo. I can circulate it. I was hoping we'd have the reval discussion and have you offer that as part of that presentation, but I can circulate the memo to everyone. And then on the 23rd, if you'd like to offer some clarity on it, we can do that then. Sound good?
That would be lovely.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else to discuss? Questions? Yes.
This last page, what are these properties? The vote of city listed properties, they're all exempt, 100% exempt, what are those?
I don't know what.
Those are the properties that were given council resolution for tax exempt status.
So they are sitting there and not paying any taxes.
They're tax exempt.
Just
100%
because
tax
they're
exempt.
not like nonprofits or anything.
No, they're nonprofit, charitable, but like we didn't have specific legislation under Rhode Island General Law and under 44(3)(3). There is a section that allows city councils or town councils to grant exemption for certain charitable organizations and those. It doesn't happen often. A lot of them have been historically tax exempt tax for quite some time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, no further business, motion to adjourn made by Vice Chair DeVito, seconded by Councilman Esposito, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carried. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Good body of work, folks. We appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I wasn't sure what the